The hum of the dojo was a familiar symphony of effort, the sharp thwack of shin on pad, the shuffle of feet on the polished wooden floor, the grunts of exertion from students locked in combat. And through it all, moving like a phantom, was Grant, an old man, a janitor. His presence was so quiet, so unassuming, that he seemed to blend into the very woodwork he spent his days cleaning. His mop glided across the floor in smooth, practiced arcs, weaving between sparring partners without ever breaking their rhythm. He was a ghost in broad daylight, a silent observer in a world of controlled violence. Most students barely registered him. He was just part of the dojo's scenery, like the weapon racks or the motivational posters on the wall. But not to Tyler. Tyler, the head instructor, a man whose ego was as inflated as his biceps, never missed a chance to use Grant as a prop for his own perceived greatness. "All right, people, eyes on me." Tyler's voice boomed, cutting through the focused energy of the room. He pointed a thumb over his shoulder at Grant, who continued his work, seemingly oblivious. "See this old man? This is what happens when you don't dedicate yourself, mopping floors while real warriors train. Let him be a lesson to you. Don't end up like Grant." A wave of discomfort rippled through the students. They exchanged uneasy glances. It was a common routine, Tyler's casual cruelty, and while it made their skin crawl, no one ever dared to speak up. Challenging Tyler meant extra grueling sessions, public humiliation, or even being kicked out. So they stayed silent, their complicity hanging heavy in the air. Grant, for his part, showed no reaction. His face remained a mask of placid neutrality, his movements uninterrupted. It was as if Tyler's words were just meaningless noise, unable to penetrate the quiet fortress of his mind. Tyler smirked, satisfied with the silence. "All right, back to it. Mia, Liam, you're up. Let's see that spinning hook kick." Mia, power and precision. Mia, a talented young practitioner, nodded nervously. She took her stance opposite Liam, her focus wavering slightly after Tyler's outburst. She took a deep breath, trying to recenter herself. She launched into the motion, her body coiling and then unspringing into a powerful spin. But in that moment, distracted and tense, her footing was off by a fraction of an inch. As her leg whipped around, her supporting foot slipped on a slick spot of sweat. Her body twisted unnaturally, her kick flying wide and uncontrolled. The loss of balance sent a shockwave through the room. On a high shelf nearby, a stack of heavy training pads, jarred by the vibration of her fall, began to teeter. Time seemed to slow down. The top pad, a dense block of hardened foam and leather, slid frighteningly from the edge. It tumbled end over end, gravity pulling it directly towards Mia's unprotected head as she lay sprawled on the floor. A collective gasp filled the dojo. Students froze, their eyes wide with horror. Tyler's smug expression vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. He was too far away to intervene. It was all happening too fast. But something else was happening, something that defied logic. Grant, who had been mopping with his back to the scene, didn't even turn his head. His mopping motion, that slow, rhythmic glide, didn't falter. Yet, his left hand, the one not holding the mop, shot out behind him. It was a blur, a movement so swift, so economical, it was almost invisible. There was no sound of impact, no thud of the pad hitting the floor, no cry of pain from Mia. Instead, there was a soft asterisk thwump, asterisk. The heavy pad was there, nestled perfectly in Grant's outstretched hand, just inches from Mia's temple. He had caught it, mid-air, without looking, without even seeming to acknowledge the event. He hadn't just intercepted it. He had received it, his fingers cushioning the impact with impossible grace. Silence, a deep, profound silence fell over the dojo, heavier than any before. Every student, and Tyler, stared, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. It wasn't just a lucky catch. It was an act of impossible reflex, of spatial awareness that bordered on the supernatural. Grant held the pad for a moment, his arm is to stone steady as a rock. Then, with the same unhurried grace, he calmly placed it on the floor beside him and resumed mopping, his rhythm unbroken. It was as if nothing had happened, but everyone had seen it. And now, they were all looking at him differently. They weren't just looking at the janitor anymore. Their eyes were drawn to the large mirror that covered the far wall, the mirror that reflected the entire dojo, and in that mirror, they saw Grant's reflection. It was a revelation. Seen from the front, his posture was no longer that of a stooped, tired old man. His back was ramrod straight. His shoulders were squared, his feet planted with a subtle, unshakable stability. The way he held the mop wasn't the grip of a cleaner. It was the precise, disciplined rolled, condições fora bio-staff. His reflection was not that of a janitor. It was the stance of a master, a warrior whose every fiber was honed by a lifetime of discipline, far beyond anything taught in this dojo. Tyler's jaw was slack. His face, usually a mask of arrogance, was now a canvas of disbelief and a dawning, terrifying realization. He had been mocking a ghost, a legend, hiding in plain sight. The students looked from the reflection to the old man, and back again. The quiet, invisible janitor was suddenly the most formidable person in the room, and as he continued his silent, rhythmic mopping, a single question echoed in the minds of everyone present: who was Grant? Tyler smirked as he accidentally kicked over a bucket of water right in the middle of the gym floor. He glanced over at Grant, the new janitor, expecting him to grumble. But Grant just sighed and grabbed a mop, not saying a word. As he knelt to clean up the mess, a heavy punching bag, loosened from its chain, began to swing down directly toward a student who was completely oblivious, lost in his music. Time seemed to slow down. My heart jumped into my throat, but before I could even shout a warning, Grant moved. It was a blur of motion. He didn't just shove the student out of the way. It was more like a dance. He pivoted on the ball of his foot, his body coiling and uncoiling with an explosive grace I'd only ever seen in professional fighters. One hand pushed the student's shoulder, not hard, but with perfect timing, sending him stumbling clear of the bag's path. His other hand met the swinging bag, not to stop it, but to redirect its momentum, guiding it harmlessly past. The whole thing was over in a second. The student, startled, just looked at Grant, confused. Grant simply said, "Be careful where you stand," and went back to mopping the floor as if nothing had happened. Everyone else saw a lucky save, a simple act of being in the right place at the right time. But I saw something else. I'm Megan, and I've been training in mixed martial arts for years. I've spent countless hours watching championship fights, studying the footwork, the balance, the sheer economy of motion that separates the amateurs from the masters. And what I saw in Grant, that wasn't just a lucky janitor. That was the footwork of a seasoned grappler, the balance of an elite striker, the way he shifted his weight, the way his hips generated power to redirect both the student and the bag without losing his own footing on a wet floor. It was flawless. It was textbook advanced technique. I felt a chill run down my spine. This guy, this quiet, unassuming janitor, who spent his days cleaning up our messes, moved like a trained weapon. Why was he here? Why hide that kind of skill? Something was seriously wrong with this picture. I quickly pulled out my phone and hit record, replaying the security footage from the gym's feed. I zoomed in on Grant's feet, watching the pivot, the weight transfer, over and over. It was unmistakable. Tyler, who'd caused the whole mess, was laughing with his friends, completely oblivious to the real drama that had just unfolded. He thought he was playing a prank on a lowly janitor. He had no idea who he was messing with, and I had a feeling nobody else did either. I saved the video. I had to know more. Who is Grant? Really? What is a man with that level of combat training doing mopping floors at our school? The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. This wasn't just some random incident. It felt like the first page of a story I wasn't supposed to read. He was hiding in plain sight, a shadow with the skills of a ghost. I watched him finish cleaning, his movements now slow and deliberate. The explosive grace from moments before, completely gone, tucked away behind a facade of normalcy. It was a perfect mask, but for a split second, I had seen the man behind it. And now, I couldn't unsee it. This was just the beginning. I had to figure out his secret. I kept the recording, a small piece of a very big puzzle. The gym felt different now, charged with a new kind of tension, and at the center of it all was Grant, the janitor who was so much more. What was he running from? Or, a more chilling thought, what was he preparing for? Today, we're rediving into a story that perfectly illustrates the difference between a show-off and a true master. It all starts with two students, Tyler and Grant. He's loud, he's aggressive, and he's always looking for a chance to prove how tough he is. Grant, on the other hand, is the quiet one. He's been training for a while, but he never boasts, never picks fights. He's just there to learn. He wants to humiliate him in front of everyone. He drags Grant into the center of the mat for a demonstration. The air gets thick. Everyone stops what they're doing to watch. Tyler's smirking, already tasting victory. He sees Grant as an easy target, a way to cement his own reputation as the top dog. The other students are whispering, some excited, some nervous. They've all seen Tyler's aggressive style, and they know he doesn't hold back. This isn't just a sparring session. This is a public challenge, an attempt to break Grant. Tyler launches his attack. It's a flurry of wild, powerful strikes. He's putting everything he has into it, aiming to overwhelm Grant with pure force. He throws a heavy right hand, a punch meant to end things quickly. But something strange happens. Grant doesn't block it in the traditional sense. He doesn't meet force with force. Instead, with a subtle shift of his body and a light touch on Tyler's arm, the punch just misses. It glides past his head as if he were never there. Tyler stumbles, caught off balance by his own momentum. He's confused. He threw his best shot and it felt like punching at a ghost. He tries again, this time with a series of kicks. They're fast, they're powerful, aimed at Grant's legs and midsection. But again, the same thing happens. Grant isn't blocking. He's redirecting. It's not about stopping the force, it's about guiding it. With a small, almost imperceptible movement, he uses Tyler's own energy against him. They were expecting a brawl, a clash of titans. Instead, they're witnessing something far more profound. Grant hasn't thrown a single punch. He hasn't landed a single kick. He's barely moved from his spot, yet he is in complete control. Tyler is the one flailing, getting more and more frustrated with every failed attempt. He's the one who looks like the amateur. This wasn't a fight. It was a lesson. Grant wasn't just defending himself. He was demonstrating a level of skill that no one in that room had ever seen before. The most incredible moment comes when Tyler, desperate and angry, lunges forward for a tackle. He wants to use his weight to bring Grant to the ground. It's a last-ditch effort. As he charges in, Grant does something so subtle it's almost invisible. He just slightly shifts his shoulder. It's not a block, it's not a push. It's a tiny adjustment in his posture. But that tiny shift is perfectly timed, perfectly placed. It connects with Tyler's own forward momentum and sends him stumbling past Grant, almost falling flat on his face. The room lets out a collective gasp. The tiny shoulder movement had just neutralized a full body charge. At this point, the whispers start. Did you see that? He didn't even move. That's not what a beginner looks like. They start to realize that Grant's quiet nature wasn't weakness, it was confidence. He didn't need to be loud because his skills spoke for itself. He wasn't avoiding fights because he was scared. He was avoiding them because they were unnecessary. He understood something that Tyler, in all his bluster, had missed. True mastery isn't about showing off how hard you can hit. It's about control. It's about understanding movement, energy, and timing so perfectly that you don't need to hit at all. This whole demonstration was a perfect example of a core principle in many martial arts, the path of least resistance. Instead of meeting an incoming force head-on, a true master blends with it, redirects it, and uses it to their advantage. Think of it like a river flowing around a rock. The river doesn't try to smash the rock, it simply flows around it, effortlessly continuing on its path. Grant was the river, and Tyler was the rock, crashing against him and only succeeding in tiring himself out. This is a level of efficiency that takes years, even decades, of dedicated practice to achieve. It's the difference between brawling and practicing an art form. What Grant demonstrated is a concept known as soft power versus hard power. Tyler was all about hard power, muscle, aggression, direct force. He believed the strongest person would always win. Grant, however, used soft power, technique, timing, and redirection. He proved that you don't need to be bigger or stronger to control a situation. By understanding the biomechanics of his opponent's movements, he could neutralize threats with minimal effort. This is why you often see older, smaller martial arts masters effortlessly handle younger, stronger opponents. They're not playing the same game. They're playing chess while their opponent is playing checkers. This story teaches us a valuable lesson that extends far beyond the dojo. In life, we often think we need to be loud, aggressive, and forceful to get what we want. We think we have to shout to be heard or push to get ahead. But true power often lies in quiet confidence, in understanding the situation, and in using intelligence and grace instead of brute force. A real master, whether in martial arts, business, or any other field, doesn't need to show off. Their results speak for themselves. They have nothing to prove because their skill is self-evident. They don't seek conflict. They seek resolution. They don't aim to dominate. They aim to control. It's about being so good that you don't have to prove it. The real masters are the ones who make it look easy. They never show off. They only control. So the next time you see someone being loud and boastful, remember Tyler. And when you see someone quiet, confident, and effective, remember Grant. True strength isn't about the noise you make. It's about the impact you have with the least amount of effort. That is the essence of mastery. What do you guys think? Have you ever witnessed a similar situation in your own life? The grainy video played on a loop on Megan's laptop, the fight lasting only a few seconds, but for her, it was an eternity of detail. Most people saw a simple, almost lucky takedown. An old janitor, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, somehow tripping a seasoned MMA fighter. But Megan saw more. She wasn't just a fan. She was a student of the fight, a martial artist who lived and breathed the science of combat. She slowed the footage down, isolating each micro-move. There the janitor's initial stance. It wasn't the clumsy, wide-legged posture of a terrified old man. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. His weight was perfectly balanced. His lead foot slightly angled inward. A classic but often forgotten detail of high-level kickboxing. It was a stance designed for explosive counterattacks, a coiled spring ready to unleash. The attacker, a local gym hothead named Tyson, came in swinging wildly, telegraphing every move. The janitor, a man they called Mr. Henderson, didn't flinch. He didn't even seem to brace for impact. Megan leaned closer to the screen, her heart starting to beat a little faster. She watched Mr. Henderson's eyes. They weren't wide with fear. They were narrow, focused, tracking Tyson's momentum. His shoulder rotation, the slight dip before the haymaker. He wasn't reacting. He was reading. It was the kind of calm that only came from thousands of hours on the mat, from facing down opponents who were faster, stronger, and meaner. It was the calm of a predator. Then came the movement. Tyson lunged, and Mr. Henderson didn't step back. He pivoted. A tiny ecumenical movement of his back foot. It wasn't a retreat. It was an angle change. He flowed around the punch like water, letting Tyson's own momentum carry him past the point of no return. Megan paused the video again. That pivot. She'd seen it before. It was a signature move, a ghost from the past she couldn't quite place. It was poetry in motion, efficiency perfected. The takedown itself was the most deceptive part. To the untrained eye, it looked like Mr. Henderson stumbled and Tyson tripped over him. But Megan saw the truth. As Tyson lunged past, off balance and overextended, Mr. Henderson's leg swept out. It wasn't a kick. It was a hook, a perfectly timed leg reap that caught Tyson's ankle, just as all his weight was committed forward. There was no strength involved, just pure, beautiful physics. Tyson went down hard, his own force used against him. The janitor was already stepping away before Tyson even hit the ground, his expression unchanged, as if he'd just swept up some dust. Megan knew this was no accident. This was the work of a master, a ghost who had just revealed himself for a fleeting second. She felt a thrill run down her spine. Who was this quiet old man who mopped floors and emptied trash cans? She opened a new browser tab, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She started with what she knew. MMA fighter pivot leg reap. Classic kickboxing stance, low center of gravity. The search results were a sea of tutorials, articles, and fight clips. She sifted through them, looking for that specific, fluid motion. Hours melted away. She cross-referenced styles, from Muay Thai to Savate, from Kyokushin karate to modern MMA. She found similar techniques, but none with that exact same effortless grace, that unique combination of stance, pivot, and sweep. It was a personal signature, as unique as a fingerprint. She felt like a detective on the verge of a breakthrough. Then, a new search query popped into her head. She focused on the era when that style was more prevalent, before the sport became dominated by wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Undefeated MMA champions, early 2000s. A list of names appeared. Legends, champions, whose posters had adorned her bedroom wall as a kid. She clicked on videos, watching old low-resolution fights. She saw greatness, but not what she was looking for. Then she saw a name she barely recognized. A name that flickered at the edge of her memory. Vanna Miller. The nickname intrigued her. A ghost, a phantom. The articles were sparse, a prodigy, an undefeated record. 10 fights, 10 knockouts. Known for his unorthodox striking and unparalleled timing. And then, nothing. He had vanished. Disappeared from the sport at the absolute peak of his career. The reason was always listed as personal tragedy. With trembling hands, Megan clicked on a compilation video titled Phantom Miller, The Ghost of the Ring. The video opened with a grainy shot of a young man, lean and wiry, bouncing on the balls of his feet in the center of a cage. And then she saw it. The stance. The same slightly angled lead foot. The same low center of gravity. The bell rang, and his opponent rushed in. Miller didn't retreat. He pivoted. The exact same fluid, economical motion. He moved around the attack, and as his opponent stumbled past, his leg hooked out in a perfect, sweeping arc. His opponent crashed to the canvas. The fight was over in under 10 seconds. Megan's jaw dropped. She played the clip again. Then she put it side by side with the footage of the janitor. The movements were identical. The timing, the foot placement, the calm, predatory focus in the eyes. It wasn't just similar. It was a mirror image, separated by 2 decades and a lifetime of pain. Phantom Miller, the undefeated prodigy who vanished. He hadn't vanished. He was here, at her gym, cleaning the mats he once ruled. The next day, Megan brought her laptop to the dojo. The advanced class was gathered, stretching and warming up. Mr. Henderson was in the corner, quietly wiping down the heavy bags. His presence so familiar, it was practically invisible. "Guys, you need to see this," Megan said, her voice filled with a reverence that made everyone stop. She first played the security footage of Mr. Henderson and Tyson. Her classmates chuckled. "Whoa, old man got lucky," someone said. "Tyson had it coming," said another. "Watch again," Megan insisted. "But this time, don't watch Tyson. Watch the janitor. Watch his feet. Watch his eyes." She played it again, this time pointing out the details she had discovered. The stance. The pivot. The sweep. The room grew quiet. The chuckles faded, replaced by murmurs of confusion and intrigue. They were fighters. They started to see it too. The subtle genius. The hidden skill. That wasn't an accident, her coach finally said, his eyes wide. No, Megan said, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't. She took a deep breath and opened the other video file. Now, I want you to meet someone. This is Phantom Miller. The compilation of Miller's knockouts filled the screen. The class watched, transfixed, as the young fighter on screen dismantled his opponents with a grace and efficiency that was breathtaking. They saw him use the exact same techniques, the same signature movements, over and over again, with devastating effect. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the sound of punches and kicks from the old video. Every eye in the dojo slowly turned from the laptop screen to the corner of the room. There stood Mr. Henderson, who had stopped his work and was watching the screen, his back to them. He stood perfectly still, his shoulders slumped, not with age, but with a weight that seemed heavier than time itself. He was watching his own ghost, the ghost of the man he once was. In that moment, he was no longer the invisible janitor. He was the phantom, the undefeated champion, returned to life in the flickering light of a laptop screen, in a room full of fighters who finally saw the legend standing among them. Ever wonder what true mastery in martial arts looks like? It's not about brute strength or flashy moves. It's about a quiet, unshakable confidence, a force so refined it appears gentle. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most profound concepts in combat philosophy. The idea that the greatest strength is the one that doesn't need to hurt, that can control a situation completely without causing harm. Imagine this scene. A young, hot-headed fighter, let's call him Tyler, finds himself cornered. He's not just losing a fight, his ego is shattered. Panic and humiliation take over. He explodes in a flurry of wild, desperate attacks. He's swinging with everything he's got, fueled by pure adrenaline and rage. His punches are a chaotic storm aimed at his opponent, a seasoned master we'll call Grant. But Grant doesn't flinch. He doesn't even counterattack in the traditional sense. He doesn't throw a single punch or a single kick. Instead, he embodies stillness in the heart of the storm. As Tyler lunges forward, Grant simply catches his wrist. It's not a forceful grab. It's a precise, almost delicate interception. The camera would zoom in on this contact point. You'd see Tyler's muscles tense, veins popping, his entire body committed to the blow. And then you see Grant's hand, calm and firm, absorbing the energy. This is where the magic happens. Grant doesn't resist Tyler's force, he joins it. He aligns his own spine, creating a solid, rooted structure from the ground up. This is a core principle in many internal arts like Aikido or Tai Chi. Your power doesn't come from your arms. It comes from your connection to the earth, channeled through a perfectly aligned body. With this structure, Grant becomes an immovable object, but one that can fluidly redirect any force that comes his way. He redirects Tyler's momentum. It's a subtle shift, a turn of the waist, a slight movement of his elbow. To an untrained eye, it might look like he did nothing at all, but for Tyler, his world turns upside down, literally. His own forward momentum, his own aggressive energy, is now working against him. He's not being thrown, he's being led. He finds himself airborne, flipping over in what seems like smooth, impossible slow motion. The beauty of this moment is its lack of violence. There's no crack of a breaking bone, no grunt of pain. It's a clean, elegant arc. The physics are perfect. Tyler isn't defeated by a superior blow. He's defeated by his own uncontrolled aggression. Grant simply provided the fulcrum, and Tyler's own force did the rest. This demonstrates a key principle. The less you do, the more effective you can be. You use your opponent's energy, their weight, their intentions against them. As Tyler comes down, Grant is already there. He doesn't let him crash to the ground. He guides his descent, setting him down gently, almost like placing a fragile object on a shelf. The fight is over. Tyler lies on the ground, not injured, but completely neutralized. He's physically fine, but his understanding of combat is shattered and about to be rebuilt. The absolute control Grant demonstrated is far more terrifying and awe-inspiring than any knockout punch could ever be. Now, let's focus on Grant's hands. The camera pans close. These are not the hands of a brawler. They are calloused, the skin thickened and worn from decades of training, of gripping, of striking posts, and of sparring with countless partners. These calluses tell a story. They speak of discipline, of repetition, of a life dedicated to a craft. They are a testament to mastery, not to anger. They are the tools of an artist, not the weapons of a thug. This visual contrast is powerful. The hands that can so easily break bones are the same hands that chose to place his opponent down without a scratch. This is the essence of what many grandmasters call martial virtue or wud in Chinese arts. The ultimate goal of training isn't just to win fights. It's to reach a level of skill where you no longer need to fight at all. You have the power to destroy, but you have the wisdom and compassion not to. Your presence alone is enough to de-escalate a situation. Your skill is a shield, not just for you, but for others as well, including your opponent. Think about the psychological impact on Tyler. He came in with rage, expecting a brutal exchange. Instead, he was handled with the effortless grace of a dancer. He wasn't beaten, he was educated. He just received the most profound lesson of his life without a single word being spoken. He experienced a power so immense, it didn't need to announce itself with violence. This is often the turning point for a student of the martial arts, the moment they realize that the path isn't about accumulating techniques to hurt people, but about refining oneself to the point where hurting people becomes unnecessary. This philosophy extends beyond the dojo. How often in our lives do we meet aggression with aggression? An argument at work, a conflict with a loved one. We instinctively want to push back, to win the point, to overpower the other person. But what if we applied Grant's principle? What if, instead of resisting, we listened, understood the other person's energy, and gently redirected the conversation? What if we maintained our own structure, our own values, and guided the situation to a peaceful resolution? This is the gentle force. It's not weakness. It's the highest form of strength, a strength that preserves and protects rather than destroys. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you can handle the storm, not by fighting it, but by becoming the calm center within it. It requires incredible patience, discipline, and a deep understanding of both yourself and your opponent. So, the next time you watch a fight scene in a movie or see a martial arts demonstration, look beyond the high kicks and the fast punches. Look for the moments of quiet control. Look for the master who wins, not by inflicting the most damage, but by demonstrating the most control. That's where you'll find the true art. That's where you'll see the gentle force that can move the world. It's a lesson that takes a lifetime to master, but it's a worthy pursuit, both on the mat and off. Thanks for watching and exploring this deep concept with me. If you found this perspective on martial arts interesting, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that goes beyond the surface. Let me know in the comments what gentle force means to you. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning. For years, everyone wondered why Grant, the undefeated champion, just vanished at the peak of his career. No interviews, no explanations, just gone. Today, we finally have the truth, and it's a story of guilt, friendship, and a promise made in the shadow of tragedy. Let's rewind. Picture a young Grant, not the silent man we see today, but a force of nature in the ring. He was electric, a prodigy with lightning-fast reflexes and a hunger for victory that was unmatched. His every move was a spectacle, a blur of power and precision. He wasn't just a fighter, he was an artist, and the canvas was the ring. His future was blindingly bright, paved with championship belts and legendary status. He was on a path to become one of the greats, a name whispered with awe for generations. At his side, always, was Jack. Jack wasn't just a sparring partner, he was Grant's other half. They grew up together, learned to throw their first punches together, and shared the same dream. Where Grant was the explosive fire, Jack was the steady, unshakable rock. In the gym, they were rivals, pushing each other to their absolute limits. Every jab, every block was a conversation between them. They knew each other's moves before they were even made. Outside the ring, they were brothers. They shared victory meals, patched each other up after grueling sessions, and planned the future they would conquer. Jack was the one person who could truly understand the pressure Grant was under, the only one who saw the man behind the champion. Their bond was forged in sweat and mutual respect. Jack was often the one to pull Grant back from the edge, to remind him of the line between fierce competition and recklessness. "Easy, champ," he'd say with a grin, "save some of that for the real fight." Their partnership was the engine of Grant's success. Grant had the raw talent, but Jack provided the discipline and the heart. Everyone in their circle knew it. There was no Grant without Jack. Then came that one Tuesday afternoon. It was a day like any other, or so it seemed. The air in the gym was thick with the familiar smell of leather and effort. They were sparring, pushing the pace as always. The championship was just weeks away, and the pressure was immense. Grant was in the zone, a place where the world outside the ropes fades to black. All that existed was the opponent, the target, the next move. He was a machine, honed and perfected for one purpose: to win. In that state of intense focus, he started pushing past the usual limits of practice. He was faster, stronger, more relentless than ever before. He saw an opening, a split-second window of opportunity. It was a higher-risk, higher-reward combination they had practiced, but never at this speed, never with this much force. He ignored the small voice in his head, the one that sounded a lot like his coach, the one that sounded a lot like Jack, telling him to pull back. It was just practice. After all, he threw the punch. It connected, but the angle was wrong. Jack, trying to counter, was caught off balance. It was a fluke, a one-in-a-million moment where everything went horribly, catastrophically wrong. Jack fell. He didn't get back up. The gym, which had been filled with the rhythmic sounds of their training, fell into a terrifying silence. Grant rushed to his side, shaking him, calling his name. But Jack's eyes were closed. He never woke up. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights, hushed voices, and a crushing, suffocating weight. Doctors, coaches, Jack's family, they all told Grant the same thing. It was a tragic accident, a freak occurrence. No one was to blame. They tried to console him, telling him that these were the risks of the sport they all loved, that Jack knew the risks too. They called it an accident, a tragedy. But for Grant, it was something else entirely. He saw the replay in his mind, over and over again. He saw his own ambition, his own relentless drive to win, even against his best friend. He saw the moment he chose to push instead of pull back. In his heart, he knew. He was the one who threw the punch. He was the one who had crossed the line. The world could call it an accident, but Grant called it his fault. The guilt was an anchor, dragging him down into a darkness he couldn't escape. One night, under the cold light of the moon, Grant walked to a secluded spot, a place only he and Jack knew. He was carrying a small, heavy box. Inside were his gloves, the very tools of his trade, the symbols of his identity. They were stained with his sweat, his effort, and now, in his mind, with the memory of his greatest failure, he dug a hole in the cold earth, his bare hands raw and bleeding. He placed the gloves inside, burying them along with his career, his dreams, and the person he used to be. As he covered them with dirt, he made a vow. He swore he would never use his hands for violence again. Not in a ring, not on the street, not even to defend himself. The power that had once been his greatest gift had become his heaviest curse. He had to walk away. It wasn't about the fear of losing another fight, it was about the fear of what he was capable of, the fear of winning at too high a cost. So Grant disappeared. He didn't run away from the memory of Jack, he ran away from himself, from the champion who had taken his best friend's life. He traded the roar of the crowd for the silence of solitude, the championship belts for the weight of his guilt. He faded into obscurity, becoming a ghost, a legend whispered about in old gyms. He chose a life of penance, hoping that by burying his fists, he could somehow atone for the one punch he could never take back. This is the truth he never told anyone. The story of why the champion stopped fighting. The school bell echoed through the empty hallway, but for Tyler, it was just a dull, distant sound. He stayed behind, rooted to the spot in the dojo, the polished wooden floor reflecting his own shame. He couldn't meet Grant's eyes. I always thought strength meant dominance. He finally choked out, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Making people fear you, making sure you were always on top. I thought that's what it took to be strong. Grant walked over, not with pity, but with a quiet understanding that felt heavier than any lecture. He placed a hand on Tyler's slumped shoulder. Tyler, that's not strength. That's just a mask for fear. True strength, Grant said, his voice calm and steady, is about control. Not control over others, but control over yourself, your anger, your ego, your fear. It's about choosing not to break, even when you have the power to shatter everything around you. It's about knowing you can, but choosing not to. Those words hung in the air, a lesson far more profound than any fighting technique. It was a complete redefinition of everything Tyler had ever believed. He had spent his life chasing a shadow, a false idol of power, while the real thing, this quiet, unshakable control, had been here all along. It was a humbling, shattering realization. He wasn't strong, he was just loud. Meanwhile, Megan sat at her computer, her finger hovering over the upload button. The footage on her screen was explosive. It was raw, powerful, and told a story the world needed to see. The fight, the aftermath. Grant's incredible display of controlled power. With a deep breath, she clicked. And the world changed. It didn't just go viral, it detonated. The video spread across continents like a digital wildfire. News outlets, social media influencers, martial arts forums, everyone was talking about it. The clip of Grant, the unassuming old master, effortlessly neutralizing a powerhouse like Tyler with nothing but technique and timing, was dissected frame by frame. Overnight, the quiet, almost forgotten dojo became the epicenter of global attention. Vans from news stations parked down the street. Reporters with microphones and cameras camped outside, hoping for a glimpse of the legendary master. The phone rang off the hook. Emails flooded the inbox. The public reaction was a tidal wave of conflicting opinions. Too many. Grant was a modern-day hero, a real-life martial arts sage embodying the true spirit of the discipline. They praised his restraint, his wisdom, his almost supernatural skill. This is what a true master looks like. One comment read, with 1 million likes. He didn't hurt the kid, he taught him a lesson for life. But for every person who hailed him as a hero, there was another who was skeptical, even critical. The martial arts community, in particular, was in an uproar. Who is this guy? They demanded. If he's this legendary, why has he been hiding in some rundown dojo for decades? Why wasn't he competing, winning championships? Some accused him of being a fraud, others a coward who was afraid to test his skills against his peers. The mystery Fattori's his past only fueled the speculation. Why would a man with such profound ability choose to remain in obscurity? The pressure was immense, a suffocating blanket of public scrutiny. The dojo, once a sanctuary, now felt like a fishbowl. Every student who walked in or out was hounded by questions. The sudden, intense fame was a double-edged sword, bringing in new students curious about the legend, but also attracting a level of attention Grant had spent his entire life avoiding. He had wanted to teach, to guide, not to become a spectacle. But no one felt the weight of this new reality more than Tyler. The video wasn't just about Grant's heroism, it was about his own failure. He was the villain of the story, the arrogant brute, poked out by wisdom. He saw his own face everywhere, a meme, a cautionary tale. The before picture in 1,000 articles about ego and humility. The shame he felt in the dojo was now magnified 1,000,000 times, broadcast for the entire world to see and judge. He couldn't escape it. Friends sent him links. Strangers recognized him on the street, some with sneers, others with a mix of awe and pity. His online presence was a dumpster fire of hate comments and mockery. Every notification on his phone was a fresh jab at his bruised ego. He wanted to lash out, to defend himself, to scream that they didn't understand. He wanted to blame Megan for uploading the video, blame Grant for humiliating him, blame the world for judging him. But Grant's words echoed in his mind. True strength is about control. He saw the rage boiling up inside him, the same rage that had led to his downfall. He saw his ego, wounded and defensive, begging him to fight back, to prove everyone wrong. For the first time, he saw it for what it was, not a source of strength, but a weakness, a vulnerability that had been exploited. The global spotlight was a crucible, burning away all his defenses. He could no longer hide behind his reputation or his physical power. The world had seen him at his worst. Stripped bare of his pride, Tyler was forced to confront the person he had become. The viral video hadn't just broken his winning streak, it was breaking his ego, piece by painful piece. And in that brokenness, for the very first time, he had a chance to rebuild himself into something truly strong. The journey was just beginning. 3 months can change everything. For this dojo, it wasn't just a change, it was a rebirth. Walking in now, the first thing you'd notice is what's missing. Grant, the sensei, no longer wears a belt. His reason is simple and profound. Skill isn't something you display around your waist. It's something you earn, something you live. It's in your actions, your discipline, your heart. The rainbow of colored belts that once rigidly defined rank and hierarchy has vanished. Instead, the focus is on the journey itself, on the sweat, the effort, and the shared growth of every single person on the mat. This isn't just about fighting anymore. It's about finding your footing, in the dojo and in life. The students are different now too. The room is filled with a new kind of energy. You see kids who used to walk with their heads down, kids who were targets for bullies. Now, they stand a little taller, their eyes holding a quiet confidence. You see students wrestling with anxiety, finding a release and a sense of control in the structured movements and deep breathing of their training. And then there are the ones who look familiar, the former fighters, the ones who came here seeking to be the toughest. They're still here, but their purpose has shifted. They're not just looking for a fight, they're looking for guidance, for a way to channel their strength into something more meaningful. Take Emma, for example. When she first came here, she was so shy she'd barely make eye contact. The thought of confrontation terrified her. The other day, a situation arose at school. A bully cornered her, expecting fear, expecting tears. But Emma didn't crumble. She remembered Grant's lessons on redirection. It's not about overpowering your opponent. It's about using their own energy, their own momentum, against them. She didn't throw a single punch. She didn't even raise her voice. With a calm and centered movement, she sidestepped, gently guiding the bully off balance. The confrontation dissolved without a fight. It was a victory, not of force, but of intelligence and control. Emma learned that true strength isn't about hurting others. It's about having the skill and the confidence to not have to. That's the real power being taught here. And then there's Tyler. If you knew the old Tyler, you wouldn't recognize him today. He was the embodiment of ego, always the loudest in the room, his shouts echoing off the walls as he demanded more, pushed harder, always focused on domination. He saw every sparring partner as an obstacle to be conquered. Winning was everything. His movements were powerful, yes, but brittle, fueled by aggression. He was a storm of uncontrolled energy. Now, picture this, the new Tyler. The storm has passed. He's a lead instructor, helping the younger students. He's calm, his voice steady and encouraging. Instead of shouting, he's kneeling on the mat, gently correcting a beginner's stance. He's explaining the why behind the movement, the philosophy of balance and efficiency. He's teaching discipline, not ego. He's showing them that control over oneself is far more important than control over others. The transformation is incredible. It's like watching two different people. The old Tyler fought against the world. The new Tyler builds up the people around him. He found a new purpose, not in being the best, but in helping others be their best. This dojo has become a sanctuary. It's a place where a kid who feels invisible can learn to take up space. It's where someone crippled by anxiety can find a moment of perfect, focused peace. It's where a person who only knew how to fight can learn how to guide. The training is still rigorous, the techniques are still sharp, but the reason for learning them has been completely redefined. It's not about preparing for a battle against an opponent anymore. It's about preparing for the battles within yourself. It's about building resilience, fostering compassion, and understanding that the ultimate goal of martial arts isn't to win a fight, but to create a person who doesn't need to. Grant watches over his class, a quiet pride on his face. He sees Emma now helping another new student with the same redirection technique that gave her so much confidence. He sees Tyler, patiently explaining the importance of a solid foundation to a group of eager kids. He sees a community, not just a class, a family, forged not in combat, but in a shared pursuit of a better self. The mats are no longer a stage for ego, but a garden where character is cultivated. This is the new purpose of the dojo. It's more than just a place to learn how to fight. It's a place to learn how to live. And that's a lesson that lasts a lifetime. Have you ever felt like you were running from a past you couldn't change, a mistake you couldn't undo? I know I have. Standing in front of my best friend's grave, the cold stone was a stark reminder of everything I had lost. The wind whipped around me, but I barely felt it. All I could feel was the hollow ache in my chest, a space that used to be filled with his laughter, his advice, his unwavering belief in me. He was the one who always saw the good in me, even when I couldn't see it myself. He was the one who told me that strength wasn't about how hard you could hit, but how gently you could guide, and I had let him down. I stared at his name etched into the marble, and the words just tumbled out, a whisper carried away by the wind. I'm done running. It wasn't a promise to him, not really. It was a promise to myself. Back at home, the silence was deafening. Every corner of my apartment seemed to echo with memories I'd tried so hard to outrun. I felt lost, adrift in a sea of regret. I scrolled aimlessly through my phone, a mindless habit to numb the pain. And then, I saw it, a video that was going viral. It was a young woman, her name was Megan, and she was speaking with a quiet fire that captivated me. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't angry, she was just telling her story. Her words were simple, but they carried an incredible weight. She said, strength shouldn't be a weapon to intimidate, it should be a shield to protect. Her video wasn't just a complaint, it was a call to action, a plea for a different kind of strength, and the world listened. Her story sparked a national conversation. Gyms across the country started re-evaluating their policies, their training philosophies, their very definition of what it means to be strong. They started implementing reforms, focusing on community, support, and inclusivity. It was amazing to watch. One person's courage, one small voice, was creating ripples of change that were turning into waves. Megan's video showed me that true strength wasn't just about personal power, but about the power to inspire change for the better. It planted a seed of an idea in my mind, a new path forward. That's when I decided what I had to do. I couldn't change my past, but I could use my experiences to change the future for someone else. I remembered my friend's words about guidance, about gentle strength. I started a small mentorship program at a local community center, working with kids who were at risk, kids who were a lot like I used to be, kids who thought strength was all about fists and fury. One of the first kids I worked with was a girl named Emma. She was tough, with a wall built so high around her heart, I wasn't sure I could ever get through. She saw every interaction as a potential conflict, every disagreement as a challenge to her authority. We spent weeks just talking. I never raised my voice. I just listened. I shared my own stories, my own mistakes, the lessons I learned the hard way. I tried to show her, not just tell her, that there was another way. Then one day, it happened. A fight was brewing in the schoolyard. Two kids were screaming at each other, fists clenched, a crowd egging them on. Emma was right there in the middle of it. The old Emma would have jumped in, fists flying, but this time, she did something different. She stepped between them. She didn't shout, she just spoke to them, calmly, using the same techniques we had practiced. She de-escalated the situation, helping them find common ground. She prevented the fight peacefully. A few weeks later, at a school assembly, Emma was given an award for her courage, for her leadership, for preventing that fight. Seeing her on that stage, holding that certificate with a small, proud smile, was one of the most profound moments of my life. It was a victory far greater than any I had ever won in a ring or on the street. It was the kind of victory my friend would have been proud of. It was proof that his idea of strength, of gentle guidance, wasn't just a theory. It worked. Life has a funny way of bringing things full circle. The real reward, the moment that truly healed a part of me I thought was broken forever, came later that evening. My own daughter, who had seen me struggle for so long, who had watched me run from my own ghosts, came up to me. She had been at the assembly and seen Emma get her award. She wrapped her little arms around my legs, looked up at me with eyes full of admiration, and said, "Dad, you're my hero now." Tears welled up in my eyes. For years, I had tried to be a hero in all the wrong ways, chasing a flawed idea of power and respect. I had fought, I had postured, I had run, and all it had brought me was pain and loss. But now, in this quiet moment, through an act of peace, of mentorship, I had finally become a hero in the eyes of the one person who mattered most. Her words weren't just a compliment, they were a validation of the new path I was on. They were the finish line I never knew I was looking for. The community center became my sanctuary. The work became my purpose. The kids, with all their challenges and all their potential, became my focus. I saw myself in so many of them, the anger, the fear, the desperate need to prove themselves. I understood it because I had lived it. And so, I tried to be for them what my friend had been for me. A steady hand, a calm voice, a reminder that they were more than their worst impulses. One afternoon, a new student arrived. He was quiet, withdrawn, his shoulders slumped as if carrying a heavy weight. He reminded me so much of myself all those years ago. The other kids were sizing him up, and I could feel the tension in the room. I walked over to him, not with the authority of a teacher, but with the empathy of someone who knows the path. I didn't say much. I just placed a hand on his shoulder, gently, a simple gesture of welcome and support. In that moment, it was like my friend was right there with me. I placed my hand on this boy's shoulder in the exact same way he had once placed his hand on mine. All those years ago, when I was the lost kid who needed guidance. The circle was complete. The strength he had given me, I was now passing on to another. It wasn't a line, a straight path of progress from weak to strong. It was a circle, a continuous loop of giving and receiving, of lifting others up, just as you have been lifted. True strength doesn't break people down to prove a point. It builds them up, helps them grow, and inspires them to one day do the same for someone else. It lifts, it supports, it connects. And in that connection, in that shared humanity, we find the strongest version of ourselves. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about finding strength in unexpected places.